No baka. Who was that? That was Ksenia. Remember we met her in Tbilisi last year in January? She's going to be here. She's coming to London.
Ksenia.
Yeah, Ksenia. We met her in Tbilisi.
Ksenia.
Yes, Ksenia.
Why are you calling her Ksenia?
Well, because I'm speaking English and I'm using English phonotactic rules.
Oh, phonotactic rules. What are they? They're the rules that tell you what sounds and sound sequences are permissible in any language and what position in the word they're allowed to take. For example, in English, the sound ng sounds perfectly normal in the middle or at the end of a word, such as the word singing, but you would never get a ng sound at the beginning of a word.
No, and the same goes for the sound ks, for example. You'd never find a ks at the beginning of a word in English, only in the middle or at the end.
What about xylophone?
Well, that's different because it's pronounced z, not ks.
Yes.
So in Russian, however, there are names that start with a ks sound. So the name that I was saying, Ksenia or Ksyusha, that's perfectly permissible in Russian, but in English, because we're not used to that, we would tend to add a vowel between the k and the s sound, pronouncing it Ksenia rather than Ksenia. Similarly, there's a Russian name Dmitry, so in Russian, a D can be followed by an M immediately. That's something that we never find in English. So we would not say Dmitry in English, we would say Dimitri. So we'd add a vowel between the D and the M. So not Dmitri, but Dimitri. And the exact same goes for the name of the capital of Georgia, for example. Tbilisi. In English, again, because we're not used to having T's followed by B's, it's something we never come across. We wouldn't say Tbilisi. We would often say, in England, Tbilisi. So a lot of English speakers would tend to say Tbilisi rather than Tbilisi. It's much more acceptable for our ears. So what about Spanish? I think Spanish has its own set of phonotactic
It does,
rules.
and one of them is that you are not allowed to have a consonant cluster starting with S at the beginning of a word. So for example, in Spanish, you do not get words that start with st, sp, sk, for example. They have to add an e in front so that the sp, sk, st is in the second syllable. So for example, in Spanish, you would not have the word spaghetti. They have espaguetis. You have to have the e in front, and even if the E is not written in the word, it will still be pronounced with an added E.
Do you have an example?
Yes, there's a Mexican businessman and philanthropist named Carlos Slim. His name is spelled S-L-I-M, but everyone will pronounce it with an E in front.
That must make learning languages quite difficult sometimes.
Yes, well, a lot of Spanish speakers who are learning English will tend to put an E in front of words that start with consonant clusters, st, sp, sk, sl. So they will often say Espain, or estrange, or especial.
That's true. And I think that will tell you that being aware of the phonotactic rules of the languages that you're learning will make it much easier to get better accuracy in your pronunciation.
Accentology.